good?
Yep.
All right.
Right, this is
Yeah. All right, well, this is Mrs. Dasso, and I observed her algebra class last week, and we are here for the post-observation and growth plan. So thank you for meeting with me and going over this growth plan with me today, and being recorded. No pressure.
That's fine.
All right, so just to review, so can you tell me a little bit about the lesson that I came and observed, what the objective was, and kind of where you're at in the classroom with the lesson? Was it beginning, middle, or end when you were explaining to the kids,
Yep.
and what you wanted to accomplish during that time?
Yep, so we were using transverse lines to set up equations to solve them. So the transverse lines, the actual rules and theorem itself, we've been working on for a little over a week, and they actually had an assessment on it, and then we were applying that to previous learning that we had been spending most of the year on, which was to set up an equation to solve for the variable. And we spent 2-3 days on this unit, and you observed the second day where I was actually working on setting up the equation in the direct instruction lesson.
Mm-hmm.
The OL for the lesson was to use transverse lines to set up equations and solve for the unknown variable.
Yeah, and I noticed that was posted on the board, and you had the students write down on the top of their notes what the objective was too, before they did some of their note taking, which was awesome. So the students probably knew what they were supposed to accomplish during that day.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And you know, the math department here, they do a really great job on teaching the Common Core standards. And so before we actually met and we went over that lesson, you already had told me that it does connect to the Common Core. The standard is 8G5, which is using informal arguments to establish facts about angles. So this is all aligned to them being able to do that. So the lesson I observed, you started off with just taking me through the lesson on how you started with the reviewing the homework, and then the lesson itself, and then end.
So my third period class, which is the class you observed, I only teach the 2 periods a day. My fourth period's a little bit longer, so sometimes I get 2 things in fourth period that I don't have time to get in third period, or in the case of you, my fourth period got to start their homework the day before, and so they were telling me things that they didn't understand, so I needed to clarify that with my third period class. So we did our normal bell work, which every day we spend time reviewing how to solve an equation, even if it's not our unit at that point, and then something on the current topic, which was to use the relationships to figure out the angles. But then before we actually started the lessons on equations, we just reviewed their homework, and I kind of helped them so that they could get it completed. Mm-hmm. And then we started the lesson where we just did direct instruction. I gave them a handout of the problems to avoid them complaining about drawing lines and angles. And so they just took the notes, and we went through the lesson, and we used the gradual release model where I showed them the lesson, and they initially freak out, they can't do it, and then we practice a little bit more, and then they feel comfortable with it, and then I give them a chance to try it on their own. Mm-hmm. And then ideally I would have unlimited amount of time, and they would always get to work on the assignment completely in class, but it really just depends on the day and the students.
The day and the students, for sure. And you had shared with me earlier that part of your professional growth plan is to model the gradual release model more in your classroom. And the gradual release model is the I do, you do, and we do, which you had just explained. And so during that lesson, I was able to see that happen in the classroom.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So taking me through that process of the gradual release model, what do you feel is the most successful part of that lesson?
I think that really having them, and sometimes I'll do this in the lesson, and I don't remember if I did or not. Sometimes I will put lessons or problems within the lesson that they don't have to write down, and all I want them to do is just watch the process. Mm-hmm. So it might even be before we take notes. Sometimes I'll just be like, hey, this is what we're doing, and then I'll have them develop the steps of what I did to actually solve the problem, so then the notes are in their wording. I like to try to break it down so when they actually read it, they know what to do, even if it's not the exact mathematical vocabulary and stuff that they should use, because we take notes in our class because they can use it on their district assessments. And so sometimes we go 6 or 7 weeks without looking at that information, and then they have to be able to recall it and be able to use it. So I'll expose them to something where it's just me doing the teaching, and then I like them to try to use whatever terminology or wording that they came up with to walk us through doing problems together, and then giving them the opportunity to practice it individually and see if they can do it without me. But to definitely lead them to the fact that they feel comfortable and confident enough to attempt it on their own, because a lot of math is just basic confidence and if you can do it or not. So
Yeah. There's a couple times that you had some notes on the board on some processes, some steps they were supposed to follow, and they should have had it written in their notebook. And you had said, hey, check your notebook, and if this isn't written down, make sure you get it written down, because you get to use it on the district assessment.
Yep.
Now, during the district assessments, do you have to then erase that board?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so everything that's in the room, like there's a poster hanging right now, and that poster will be gone when we go to actually do testing. Because it can't be up for Iowa assessments when we take it anyway, so I don't like to give them like that grudge of something that they can use for the testing purposes. They can use any notes that they want down, so.
I also noticed one of the students, Nathan, I think it was, he wasn't taking notes, and you addressed him by saying, now last time we took a test, you got really frustrated because you wanted the notes that you didn't take. So in order to try to prevent that this time, you reminded him of that last time.
Yes.
So that did prompt him to then write down some notes in his notebook.
Yeah, that's always the day that they remember that they should have taken notes, is the test day. And so I always try to remember, like, remember when you broke down last time? Let's not do that.
Yes. What things might you have done differently during this lesson if you were to go and teach it again?
I think I would have spent, again, if time wasn't an object, I would have spent 2 days on the different lessons. So 2 days on the first lesson, which you didn't see, which was doing more supplementary angles and just talking about the rules in a different context. And then spend 2 days doing that gradual release model and really slowing it down, and maybe doing like stations or group works where the kids that are confident in solving equations, I could have done like small group with them, say, hey, this is what you're doing, and they could have done that and maybe done some kind of extension with it. And then the kids that I know have been fighting me on learning equations all year long, we could have definitely spent like way longer on that. But for the handful of kids that say they can't solve equations, I can't really like stop the pacing guide because I have to give a test at a certain date. So
do you feel like the pacing guide really limits you sometimes?
Yes, absolutely.
It does.
Yep. And because this isn't a priority standard and it's 3 questions on their district assessment, I can't really spend the time that I would need to teach it to fidelity. And they're also not going to see it until they are sophomores in high school. So even if I taught it to 100% proficiency for all my kids, there's a really good chance that within 2 years they're going to forget it anyway.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I told you, I don't carry money on me ever. So the fact that I had it, I don't remember I remember what I bought. I drove to Galesburg on Sunday and bought some cast iron pans from someone.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cast iron is awesome.
I love it.
I bought an old Abel skeever pan. You know what that
Yes,
is?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because my aunt is into those, and that's a really good brand of cast iron pans.
It's not a brand, it's a type of pan.
Okay, then I'm confused.
It's the one with the little divots in it. It looks like an egg poacher or something.
Okay.
And you make Danish pancakes in it, which are called Abel skewers.
Okay.
And so
They're like
we
little
actually
baby
make
pancakes.
They're
Is that-
round. They're actually, it's kind of fried.
We are
Yeah,
filming.
but that's okay.
We're going to edit this section out.
I'm sorry.
No, you're
No
fine.
worries. Do you use soap when you wash them or no soap?
Yes.
Okay.
Not all the time.
Okay.
Depends how bad they get.
Oh, because you're buying them used. Yeah.
Well, no. I strip them when I buy them new. Or buy them used.
You gotta, like,
completely
season
strip
them. I gave all my point sheets to Greg Tisson.
I have
But
some in my room, I think.
It's not a big deal. I'll
do you
go get
want
some
this
from
period?
Greg. I just, I have 2 that I had run out and I didn't realize they'd run out, so I put them to my 2, so.
This period though?
Yeah.
So I can run them to you later this period.
I'll just go see if Greg has some and then, if not, I'll call you.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep.
So,
All right.
I have to strip them all and then start over.
Okay.
When I buy them used.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
I know.
It's gross.
Yeah.
But my parents have one that we bake Ferdins on Christmas Eve. It's like the only family tradition that's been our family for generations.
Mm-hmm.
So I found one and had to go get it.
That's awesome.
Spent too much money on it. No, I'm gonna stop bothering you.
No worries. Have a good day.
I think that I just cooked silver dollar pancakes on the one that my mom had when I was like a little kid. It's probably meant for something way cooler.
Probably.
Just little baby pancakes.
Yeah. You have to Google that later. All right, so you would have done, more work on it to really make sure that the students understood the standard. But since it's not a priority standard, you're spending a few days on it, and then they get it again in high school.
Correct.
So you're not spending a lot of time on it like you would a priority standard.
Correct.
Okay.
And then we actually had a high school teacher here last year, and he was placed here part-time, and he was surprised that we had taught any geometry standards.
Oh, okay.
So then that kind of eased my thought process on it. It's okay that it's not mastered because they don't think we teach it at all anyway. So they start from the beginning. So the kids that understand it, they'll remember it, hopefully, or at least it comes easy to them the next time. So.
And how do you know if the kids understand it? I know there's a few questions on the district exam, but from that lesson that day, was there any sort of evidence that you gathered or used to see where they're at on understanding it?
As I was walking around, I could see if the kids recalled the rules, which is the hardest part, is to remembering the 4 congruent rules. So if they were congruent and being able to set up the equation, that was kind of the only new teaching that we had done that day, was to identify the relationship shown on the image, and then from there determining if it was congruent or supplementary and setting up the equation. From there I was able to, when I was walking around, seeing who was picking up on it. But as far as solving the equation thing, which is actually the majority of the problem, I already know that from pulling them from enrichment time and smart times, which kids in that class know how to solve equations and which kids are actively trying to say they don't know how to solve equations. So the basic process, I kind of already knew who would be able to do it from the assessment that they took just over the rules and then applying it. So I kind of had a general idea already going into the lesson who would be able to do it and who wouldn't.
And I noticed when you were going through the lesson, you were talking through the problem step by step. So you would say, all right, students, we're doing this, 3n, I'll just think about my examples here. -3 equals -6 plus n minus 3. And when you were explaining that, you did it in terms of money. So you said something like, if someone lends you $6 and is silly enough to lend you $3 more, and so you kind of put it in context that they could understand.
Yeah.
And then you had students say the answer, so you didn't move on until you heard the right answer.
Correct.
And then you also would, when you'd walk them through, you said things such as, all right, are there any parentheses here that we need to look at? Okay, is it an acute angle? And then they would say yes or no, and then that would kind of guide them to the next step.
Right. And so I don't know if you even could see on the board what was there. So that is the process that we use for solving equations. And it's actually that we have the 7th grade teachers use that same process as us. So it's the same process since 7th grade that they have. So it's like the 3-step process to solve an equation. And so as we're going through it, the terminology might be different than how they hear it in 7th grade, but probably since about October, we've gotten all 3 steps. So it really is just repeating the same type of thing to prompt them that oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Do you ever try, we're focusing a lot on CLR strategies, call and responses. Do you ever try different types of getting the students to answer questions in class when you're walking through problems like that?
I have cold call sticks that I use occasionally when I can see that kids are paying attention, and it makes some of the kids, it gives them a little bit of anxiety in that class. There are some kids that just don't feel comfortable saying the answers, although they might have the right answer on their paper. So a lot of the times it will be just me going by and saying good job, and then the 3 kids that always want to yell at the answers and get mad, then I just let them yell it out. And the other kids no. I mean, we're almost through the school year at this point, so I know which kids are gonna yell it out. And if I call on that one kid, the girl across the room that has to yell at the right answer every time is gonna lose it. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're a PBIS school where we just started to implement the online live school point system too. And so I was making note that you are on the PBIS committee and do a ton of stuff with PBIS, pretty much run the show some days, most days. And so you made a really great point on acknowledging the students when they are doing something they should be doing, going through and giving them points on live school, and walking around giving them on-task points.
Yep.
So the students were very receptive to that too when you were walking around and seeing that, and you made sure to address behaviors both positively, and you were very calm and collected when you were addressing some of the negative behaviors too.
Thank you.
Which maybe was frustrating to you, maybe it wasn't. Can you talk a little bit about some of the behaviors that were frustrating to you and how you dealt with them, or how it could be better?
I have a few students in that class that kind of try to push me every day, and I remember to try to stay calm. One student in particular, every day she needs to sit by her friends, and it's a fight every single day, and we go through this like cycle where she knows she's not going to be able to, and then you are in the heat of her not ever wanting to sit where she's supposed to sit. We're back on the decline now that she sits in her assigned seat. She does all of her homework now.
Oh, wow.
It's going to come back. But it literally is a fight almost every single day. No, you need to sit in your seat here. You cannot sit over there. You can't focus when you're there. And she has to acknowledge the fact that she knows that I'm right, but she has to win the battle. And so actually the next day she got a referral for the same day, but it literally takes a week process of her refusing to sit in her assigned seat and being able to focus. And then yesterday she made up 5 assignments for me yesterday. So it's that battle, but I don't try to get into arguments with the students about it because it's not going to work with this clientele. As soon as I shut them down and write a referral for such a small behavior, it's over. And so it was 3 days of calling her mom, reminding her, giving her 3 days of referral warnings, and finally when I wrote the referral, it wasn't an explosion on she knew it was coming. I let her, you literally have picked this at this point. And so it's not a fight. She's not mad at me. We see each other in the home. We're still fine. But the other child, Nathan, he I don't know how he got to this stage in his life where he just doesn't do anything ever. I don't see him do anything in any other classes either. And I don't know what it is about him, but the taking notes, just doing basic educational things, he forgets it. He forgets he should have his notebook and take his notes. It's the weirdest thing. The girl particularly, she knows exactly what she's supposed to do every single day, but some days I talk to him and I'm not sure that he actually knows what's going on. And so for me that's the toddler thing, because I have 3 young children, it's reminding myself maybe he just doesn't remember that we take bell ringer notes every single day for the entire year. And so it's definitely practicing the patience, but that's a middle school mentality. If you're going to be a middle school teacher, you definitely have to have patience, because it is sometimes they have amnesia, don't remember anything.
When we met for our pre-observation meeting, you had mentioned that you wanted me to look at those 2 particular students and keep some data on them. And so I do have some notes right here of my observation. I will let you have those. And you'll see in there that there are some notes on those 2 students too, particularly the one that wouldn't sit in her assigned seat. Some things that I noticed were you didn't get into details with her. She tried to get you in context, and you just dealt with the situation and not get into the details of the context in the argument with her.
Yeah.
One of the things that she had her phone out and talking to her friends, and you said you're not in your assigned seat. If you want to sit there, you need to be a model student. And put your phone away. And then you had said later on that she needed to go sit in her assigned seat and put her phone away, or it's going to be taken. And then she put her phone away, and then she got back to behaving. So you can see she didn't lash out at you. She didn't get angry at you. So you can see there is a relationship there of respect, even though she doesn't always follow your directions right away.
Right.
You've taken the time to build up that relationship, and you know how she works and how she functions, even though it is frustrating at times.
Yeah.
I've seen her in much worse situations than in your classroom.
I could take it up a notch for sure.
But not to push her buttons, because that's going to break the relationship, and she's going to be removed from your classroom and not learn the math.
Right. Yep.
And not learn how to behave.
And that's actually what I said to her yesterday. I was I know that it's frustrating for you that I care so much about you learning. If I didn't care, I'd let you sit right next to your friend and I'd write you a referral every day after 10 minutes of the class. And she just looked at me and she was like, okay. You're right. It'd be way easier to write a referral and say, see ya.
Yep. But you care about the academic and the social learning
Yeah.
for the students and the growth for the students, and they need both in order to be successful adults. And you get that, and you know that, and you teach to both those. So kudos to you on that.
Thanks.
Is there any other supports that you would like from me as you continue to go through the rest of the math lessons or with the social learning for these students?
I think with like the gradual release model, I feel like I've been working on it, so I'm getting better at that, but I definitely think there's more than just those two kids. Those are definitely my two high flyer kids, but if at any point you ever wanted to come and observe, I have like other kids that they're not necessarily screen behavior problem, but they are doing things that are not like helping their educational system. So I have one kid particularly, like he just sits there quietly and doesn't do anything every single day. So he is definitely like that kid that could easily be failing every class and no one notices because he's not a behavior problem. So like that would be something that maybe you could in the future like come and look and see if there's anything like there. Yeah, but
Keep some data on students that are on task and not on task, on task behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. And you had mentioned that if you had more time with this lesson to do more of group activities and stations where you could work with some individually too. And it might not work for this lesson, but if you do a lesson like that in the future, I would love to come in and be of support to maybe
absolutely.
help monitor some of the groups or help
Yeah.
students along the way when you have a lot of stuff going on at once with differentiated instruction and only you in the classroom.
Yeah, and it was a difficult transition to go from the co-teaching model. We had an amazing co-teacher with us last year, and so we were able to do a lot of stations and a lot of breaking down of lessons and not have to do so much direct instruction. But because of the way that the district's going, a lot of our lessons sadly are falling back on direct instruction because we have classes of, you saw a small class 20, my other class is 28, so that's not realistic for me to like, all right, you 5 come over here, that's other 23 of you, good luck.
I know, and you started the year with a co-teacher too, but with the
Yeah.
changes, they were taken out of your classroom.
Yep.
So that makes it difficult. So yeah, let me know upcoming lessons so I can come in and be of support with you, and I plan on
absolutely.
coming in next week and taking some data on some of those students on on-task behaviors.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, Mrs. Dasso, for
welcome.
your time
You're welcome.
and dedication to our students at SMART.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I wonder if you can figure out, we should have, like if we had a clock, we could figure out when you have to sniff that.
They can like fast forward, I think, through it too.